Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder aboard the HMS Nelson, and we're talking about this new British premium battleship sitting at battle rating 7.7, rank 6, in a different manner than we talked about the USS Maryland in the last video. Although we will talk about the same factors, they have some similarities but also some differences, and there are also some differences to her sister ship, which shares battle rating and rank and sits in the actual tech tree, the HMS Rodney. So let's go straight into it. Let's start with this being a premium pack battleship costing you 18 Gaijin coins, euros, dollars, whatever your currency is. She's not worth it. That is too much money to ask for a single premium tank, plane, ship, helicopter, whatever. And we will talk also in this video about some potential alternatives to this premium and a bit about the future of the British tech tree and its current state, because I think it is a bit different to a lot of the other tech trees. And in fact, the HMS Nelson, together with her sister ship, the HMS Rodney, have the joint highest caliber of 16-inch guns compared to a lot of 15-inch guns that you see in the British tech tree, be it in the Queen Elizabeth class or be it in the Revenge class. And yeah, unless we will dip into some paper designs, that's not gonna change. And so I think we will talk about now the basics, the principle, what makes her actually exceptionally unique and exceptionally durable, and then we talk about some of the shortcomings, and then you can see what you might expect from facing the ship or, you know, buying it and playing it. And we will start, as usual, with the belt, because that is relatively thick with 355 millimeters, and where the magazines are, it's also angled downward or inward at 15 degrees, so actually increasing additionally the line of sight thickness versus plunging fire. Then you have also a front bulkhead of 305 millimeter or 12 inches. That's not really that thick, but it's good enough for angling, and you can angle this ship much better than the US standards, because your joint angle of the bulkhead and the belt armor is much closer to, well, 90 degrees, unlike the closer to 120 millimeters on the US standard USS Maryland. And this is aided by a 158 millimeter deck plating over the magazines and the secondaries, thinning down in the middle to only 95 millimeters over the machinery. I say only, that's still really good. And so the ship is, when angled, really well suited hull-wise versus plunging fire. And yeah, the angling is really effective in this respect. Then we have the barbettes. On the side, they're also really thick with 381 millimeters thickness, and on the front thinning down to the belt thickness of 355 millimeters, and in between the turrets we go down to 305 millimeters, but there it is not that likely to get hit, especially when you angle. And the turret faces are 406 millimeters. However, it is angled only at 24 degrees, so plunging fire actually negates this, and you have big holes where the guns stick out, and there it's only 102 millimeters, so even destroyer sap at medium range can go through, so be aware of this. You have an all or nothing armor scheme. You have a really long nose. The three turrets are very close together, and it's now everything around the turrets that I have to discuss further because it is so unique. So you have big wide barbettes, and if they get panned, it doesn't really matter all that much, because first of all, the penalty for the barbette getting destroyed and repairing it has been drastically reduced compared to previous patches, thank God. But despite this, you have still a 35-second base reload, which is the second longest after the US battleships. And so yeah, 9 guns in 3 triple turret helps a bit in the DPM in comparison, and due to your arrangement of 2 super firing turrets in the front and the one immediately afterwards, with the rotation angle being forward, or the rotation area being forward, is good, especially when you want to switch from left side to right side or starboard to port side. And then there is also, due to the construction, a base angling full broadside, really great angle. However, Gachin has been a bit lazy, and the super firing turret, the middle turret, has the turret hanging over the barbette, which is not a problem. But if, for example, this turret looks to the port side and gets knocked out and you have to rotate to the starboard side, then for the rear turret, that turret overhang limits the area in which the guns could elevate. This is not a problem if all the turrets look into the same direction. But Gaijin has been a bit lazy in outlining the area where the rear turret's guns can elevate. Namely, that first of all, it looks a bit wider than the actual overhang, but also even if the turret overhang isn't there, the guns are still not allowed to, lift up, to elevate, to shoot at the enemy. And so you have to rotate the entirety of the ship 10 to 15 degrees more, and that pains the ship because it has some additional splinter catch plating, but the belt, the barbette and everything has nothing behind this. There is no real turtleback visible, and so the armor is it. And so you get hull penetration due to the fact that you need to rotate the ship more than the actual construction tells you to do so. And that is infuriating. That costs the ship a lot of performance. At range, it's not such a drastic thing, but the actual angle where you can effectively bring all your guns to bear and have an effective angle is very small. It's a very similar issue, just lined out in a different way compared to the USS Maryland, where the rear crane arms prevent the most rear turret from getting an additional extra some few degrees. And the way that it is done is just not cool, Gaijin. So then the magazines for both the secondaries and the main armament are buried deep down below, and you have no ready racks in the actual hoists in the barbettes. So blowing this ship up takes a while, and when it's angled, when it's basically in a defensive mode, it takes a long time to cut this beast down. Maybe with a frontal plunging penetration, because you have no all or nothing armor scheme if you over angle. But again, it takes so much time. It requires such precise aiming, and this ship is really difficult to bring down if you command it properly. You stay at range, you angle, and you just fire away. So let's talk about some other things and some differences to her sister ship. First of all, the HMS Nelson is in her 1945 configuration. That means we have many 40mm. We have 40mm of the 2-pounder variety in octuple mounts, 6 of them, and we have 4 quad 40mm garnished with a whole plethora of 20mm. The heavy AA is only 6 4.7-inch guns. Not twin mounts, 6 in total, 3 per side. That's it. And you have 6 twin secondaries, which do not really help you in the AA department at all, since they only can shoot sap. And that brings us to the ammunition of the main battery. Remember, 35-second reload. We have the 16-inch Mark 1B HE, and it has a respectable 75 kilograms of TNT. Remember, within the British tech tree, we have the 13.5-inch gun that has an HE shell carrying 88 kilograms. Much smaller caliber, much higher yield. Still basically unreached within War Thunder. And even the 16-inch, it's not terrible, but not great either. And then we come to something that's a bit controversial, and that is the 16-inch Mark 1B APCBC. In the Tech Tree variant, that's the Tier 1 upgrade. Since this is a premium ship, you get it for free. And, well, it's good news, bad news situations. First of all, master velocity is only shy of 800 meters per second, 797 meters per second to be precise. That's relatively slow, but it's a 16-inch shell, so that is on the upper end of optimal caliber to surface ratio, or weight to surface ratio. And it carries also with 20.9 kilograms a good bang. It's not as great as, for example, the World War I 15-inch Barham AP that has 30 kilograms, or the German Bayern class 15-inch with 25 kilograms. But it is much better than some of the better performing Japanese or US 16-inch guns that have much below that TNT yield. However, the shell is also much lighter, with only 929 kilograms compared to the over 1 ton or over 1,000 kilogram projectile mass from the US or the Japanese battleship AP. That means that we have 515 millimeters of penetration at 10 kilometers. That's not bad, but it's not as good as the US AP from the 16-inch 45, and that is roughly a 10% difference, and sometimes you feel it. Now, this difference also gets made more extreme by the 0.025 second fuse delay. Now that means that you don't get as deep into an enemy ship after a successful penetration to bring the 20.9 kilograms of TNT to a point where it actually hurts. And especially versus angling battleships, where then the line of sight between maybe a successful hull penetration and the inner modules that matter, like magazines and the machinery and other very valuable things, is much enlarged, and so the shell might go off and do no damage, detonating above a turtleback, detonating before a splinter catching inner plating, you know, and you really feel this. Other ships like the US 16-inch guns with 0.035 seconds, that's also the same one as on the German World War II 15-inch guns like on the Bismarck and the Gneisenau, they feel much better. And I have also some footage just before the patch of the Kronstadt, where I got 14 kills. Not 4, not 10, 14 kills, due to the astonishing performance of a shell that has 0.05 second fuse delay, twice as much. And you really feel the effectiveness, the difference in effectiveness of a longer fuse in War Thunder. It's really one of the defining factors. Sadly, when it comes to the British tech tree, all other shells of a certain caliber range, let's say the 15-inch for example, also have all 0.025 seconds, and you feel this. Versus lesser ships, if they're broadside on, it's not that obvious, but when it comes to an actual opponent that actually knows what you're doing, what he's doing or she's doing, and that person is angling the ship correctly, it will take a day or two to bring him down. And so when it comes to a direct comparison to the effectiveness of the firepower, I again have to give it to the USS Maryland. Less guns, longer reload, and yet better precision, better fuse delay, noticeably better effect. Even though the footage looks like I'm doing okay. But, you know, I thought that the USS Maryland best be demonstrated on a punching bag named the Bismarck that can take the punching. And, you know, just to show off the absurd precision of the USS Maryland. The precision on the Nelson is, I guess, average. And so the real advantage isn't there anymore. And so when it comes to what ship do I think is worth the €80 price tag for a rank 6 premium ship, USS Maryland overall, no, there are better alternatives, there are more fun alternatives, and it's too expensive. The Gneisenau might be the most value for your bucks, in my opinion. But that comes down to the precision, the DPM, the Scharnhorst armor layout, and the speed, the torpedoes, and everything. And then when we come to the Soviets, they have the Sevastopol, which is not an improvement over the Kronstadt, so that's probably the least value for money in my opinion. And then we have the Nelson, and the Nelson is on par with the USS Maryland when it comes to value for money, in my opinion. And this is very much what you value in a battleship. Again, great looks, great overall armor layout, but then bad fuse, not the greatest DPM, and not that much penetration. Now, while she is in her 1945 configuration, she has, as I mentioned, a lot of AA assisted by radar, and that's a bit better than on the HMS Rodney in her 1940 configuration. But there is one thing that the HMS Rodney also has that the HMS Nelson doesn't, and that is torpedoes. And those torpedoes are the biggest in War Thunder, although not the most effective ones. The TNT bursting charge, the explosive mass is good enough. The range and speed are also good enough. But they are just a fun thing to have if then you have to defend yourself against a ship that just comes too close for comfort. And it's more like a nuclear threat. You're probably never gonna use it, but it's fun to have, right? And sometimes nukes get used in War Thunder. So that is the HMS Nelson. She's lacking the torpedoes in exchange for better AA, but the better AA, as I mentioned so often, doesn't really matter all that much. She's really unique in her design, really great in soaking up damage. Not that excellent in dishing it out though, although not terrible again. In my books, 80 Gaijin coins is way too much, so now let's talk about alternatives. You can go on the marketplace and get the HMS Barham. You have those punchy 15-inch guns with a 30-second reload, 8 of them. But, as I mentioned, the ammunition is World War I style. You have the biggest blast of any AAP that I've come across with 30 kilograms, aside from some Russian fantasy things. But the penetration is ugly with less than 400 millimeters. But you get it for lower battle rating, and if you just care about battle time participation, which is the main source of your RP, then it'll do fine putting a talisman on it, and you have money to spare, right? Then maybe you have another battleship like the HMS Marlborough, and you know, you can put money on that one and just have a good grinder. Or you put it on the Rodney and you have overall the same ship, maybe slightly better effectively. And when it comes to the HMS Vanguard with her supercharged AP, you know, with the 381mm Mark 22B SC APC, you have very similar performance overall. 532 millimeters for that 15-inch guns compared to your 515 millimeters. It's even slightly better, and same bang. And what will the future bring? Well, it's the biggest caliber that there is, but not the one with the most penetration. And I think it's interesting to see where the upcoming King George V class will sit in performance, in battle rating, and there are so many of those ships that were built that we can expect some in the tech tree, some as a premium, and maybe some as a reward. And if you're patient enough and you look at the British tech tree and you just don't see the flair of it yet, aside from the iconic names and their actual real-life performance and the stories that they've racked up. Yes, HMS Warspite, I'm looking at you. Game-wise, the British tech tree is not that exciting at the moment for me personally. And that's all I can say. That's all that matters. And thank you for enduring through this long ramble of mine. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this informative. I hope you will tune in next time for some missile magic. And as usual, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, share this link with your friends, clanmates, and whoever else you want to annoy with such information. For you it's just a couple of clicks, for me it means the world. And as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.